recording just so I have this for posterity. How do I,
Mhm.
does it pop up when it say it's starting, or is it just, there we go.
Recording is started.
Got it. Perfect, perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and dip in. So we've got groups for units. We keep an inner layer that is the interior guts of the unit. On the we build kind of a first floor of that, right? And then we build an outer group that basically we like it to include the shell of the group. And by that, I mean kind of the exterior walls, the exterior wall finishes, and windows and porches. I think I've said that right.
Yes.
Okay. And the essence of that. So if we were to, I've got my scope box on. Nope, no, I don't. Right. So if I were to ungroup one of these stacks, and you see we keep every single unit as a stack, the ADA units, the standard units, any modifications to those original units, which we'll get into in a minute, everything should remain in a group. Another way of saying this, less politely, is don't explode the groups. No breaking of the groups ever, 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 ever. In fact, we like to usually tell people when they start generally to not muck about with the units at all. That is something that your project manager should pretty much draw and be in charge of, just because it's the project manager's job to understand the rules and laws associated basically with those units, right?
And
So
while that's correct, it's still important to be looking out for things that just couldn't possibly be right. If you
that's
see
true.
anything weird, and then let's talk about it.
That's true. Yeah. Don't be silent. Always say something. Absolutely. So the way, and sometimes you'll probably be asked to do another group, right? So we have scope boxes. Are you familiar with scope boxes? I'm assuming that you are.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Sorry if this is a bit reductive, but we'd want to make sure that we don't miss anything.
Everybody
Um,
comes in with a different level, you know.
Gosh, do they ever? And then you never know what holes are there, and you feel bad for not filling them. The scope box name, one of the big things you'll find out is we want the unit name, and this has a particular name, and the scope box name to match. Um, Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. We just don't want a bunch of different names for what is the exact same thing. We want to, let's talk about that. When we build these units, the other thing that we try to really make sure we are coordinating is the insertion point. That's this X and Y little guy. I don't know what Revit actually calls it, but you can move it around.
Insertion point.
Perfect, perfect. We like
The origin point.
the origin point. Thank you. We'd like, in a perfect world, we'd want the origin point to be the same point wherever possible. And that's like whether or not I'm doing a corridor building, garden style building, townhome, it doesn't matter, right? And the idea is really simple, right? If your origin points are all the same, it makes swapping out stacks of units super, super easy. So let's say that this unit, for whatever reason, I actually wanted it to be a 2D. Ideally, it would not move at all. We would just be able to have a 2D unit, and that unit would change at that particular location.
To add to the origin point, you also want to make sure your accesses are pointing the same way.
Correct.
The arrows.
That's right. Yeah, you can mirror these units about when I'm building the buildings, or when you're building the buildings, or however it is. But like, as long as you start with the original X, the X and Y all being the same orientation, it should be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
See, there you go. And that's now a 2D unit, but it should not, and I don't believe it has moved at all, which is perfect. So I'd put that back as a 2C. In fact, I'll go ahead and just undo that now. Don't want to break a current model that we're all working in. Other things that I like to see with the units, you might notice some dashed lines. Those are important, especially when you're building corridor building units, but they come in really handy even when you're building a garden style unit. And what I mean are, like, you'll see these little tick marks right here. Yeah, little vertical line. We want those to stay where possible. These units need to be for our wall type, we build these at 1 inch apart. So having that little mirrorable line is great. I also do one when I do a corridor building, having a mirrorable line like right down the center of a hallway. So then I can visually see if something's not lined up. It makes it much easier to see that, right? So we avoid potentially having mistakes as we build it. Cool. Now I know, I hope it does. I hope it does. The reason we do it this way is inevitably sometimes things change. You need to move a building around, and the way the corridor teams in our office do it, they basically ungroup a lot of these groups for a variety of reasons, none of which are good when you actually think about it long term, but they do it. And then what that means is when it's time to move the thing, when the owner wants something different, it makes it so much harder to move everything, right? You'll just right now I can just click and drag these things, and not only does the stack of units, all 3 floors, 4 floors, whatever it is, move, but the trim, the siding, everything goes with it, which is wonderful. It makes pivoting possible like we used to pivot when it's even better than what it was in AutoCAD doing it this way, because then the elevations are half drawn for you already. That make sense?
Yes, it's very useful. I haven't seen that done before. It's just kind of one of those rules of thumbs that they expect everyone to know in my previous firms, but that is a lot easier.
Yeah, I think the challenge is people don't like doing this because they've had trouble getting the groups to be stable in the past. And I think that stability is caused by a variety of issues. I think we've learned, in particular, we had issues with the tile floors in the bathrooms. Like, we got rid of those and all of a sudden stability returned to one of our models. So we've worked very hard to identify pieces and parts that cause these units to not be stable and not work the way they should, and gotten rid of them.
Been a
And
years-long process.
Chris hasn't suffered at all.
No. Well, and I
It-
mean, if you're running into problems, the best advice, the best advice I can give you is just stop, think about it, and call one of us, and let's put our heads together and figure it out. But I would say like 75% of the time, it's a face-based or wall-based item that is in, say, like the interior group, but hosted on a wall that's outside of that interior group, which, like, you can do, but it's, it's
Yeah.
tricky. We try to avoid it when we can.
100%. 100%. So let's talk about how this draws up before I forget about it, right? So this unit, this is a 1BR-1B. And we'd like to keep it always the same, where like the lowercase n tells us something very special, something very particular. And what it's telling me, ideally, is that the interior guts of the unit are exactly the same as a 1BR-1 lowercase a or lowercase c or lowercase d. All it's telling us when we name it that way, the naming convention is super important. It just means the interior guts of that unit have not changed, right? For this one, it's pretty self-evident. What's changed, that this wall right here along the living room is a 2x6 wall because it's an exterior wall facing a breezeway with a stair. as opposed to, I probably won't be able to find a 1BR1 unit. Yeah, here we go. Here's a 1BR-1A where it's a 2x4 wall, a demising wall separating units, which is a rated wall. You can see that that's changed. That's the only change, right? And that's super important to us, that the names should tell us a lot. And it's super important to us because then we can do clever tricks when it comes to the drawing package like this, right? That we know a 2BR-2 versus a 2BR-1. We know based on the naming convention. Of course, this is doing something a little bit different, so bear with me. But the essence of it is we know the guts are the same. So instead of drawing it twice, we just refer back to the one unit, which is here. So we cut down on a whole lot of errors. And then we only go through the process of tagging the exterior walls or the exterior conditions, which is what has changed in this particular case.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is important because it's not that hard, right? To just group everything and have it live in both unit plans, right? It should be relatively easy. But the day that those two unit plans become 99.99% the same and not 100, we get questions, and that costs us time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's easiest just to have everything done correctly in one place, and that just saves on coordination.
Correct. And then I think the flip side is true. If for whatever reason that we knowingly change the inside of this unit, then this name, the naming convention should change. And you'll get, as you work in the firm, you'll get used to the way we name things, that you'll intuitively know without having to do any investigation what it was I was thinking when I made that particular item. In a perfect world. And it will work every single time without fail. There will be no exceptions to that rule whatsoever. Promised.
Let me ask you a question about this stuff. Can you show me your lawn here?
Yes.
So you're gonna have, yeah, okay. And
Yep.
I'm guessing that the top 4 up there are what you have actual unit plans for, and the bottom, however many of those are just sort of modeling.
Right. So the way I'm dividing this up, these are the three core competency units.
Hmm.
These are the 3 ADA versions of
Yeah,
those
okay.
units.
Mhm.
And then everything down below it is useful for the building of the actual model, but don't actually show up in the enlarged unit plans insofar as the core.
Yeah, that's basically how we started doing it too. I think Ben moved them to the right instead of right below, but yeah,
I actually don't care about how you set up your
Yeah.
lawns, just so long as
me neither.
it's. I do care about the colors. You probably have noticed that there's, and we'll call it green, blue, and what did we call it, Julie? Dead salmon.
Yes.
Hey, now that was my term.
And it's a beautiful term. It should forever be enshrined.
Who made fun of me for that in a meeting with you and Vadim? Was it Michael Gross? Somebody?
Somebody abused you maliciously for things that had nothing to do with you, and it was the greatest day ever.
Yeah, right.
But I digress. Chris took it. No, we won't. The point is that what we're losing it, we're reining it back in.
Sorry,
We're
yep.
bringing it back. No, if we can't have fun, there's no point. The essence of the teachable moment here in this is that it's probably already self-evident that the 1BR accessibles, the 2BR accessibles, the 3BR accessible, however many there are, the accessible version to help it pop on the page and be easy to understand where they are and how many of them there are, is a derivative of the color. We just want to darken whatever that color is for that unit, right?
And all this is handled with color schemes on the coordination plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And then not to be, which most of the time they'll color the room tag. Or not the tag, the room.
We'll set a department for when we add those rooms into the units.
And that is,
and you modify and check that out by going into the view template, clicking on color schemes, and then it'll be under like the room subdivision, and should be called department color scheme. It should all be right there. And ideally, this is all already set up for you, and you don't have to worry about it. It's just sort of automatic.
Yeah. So here's a good application of it, right? This is what we used to do for several years. Just, the good old black and white. And we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to do
Even on standard garden styles.
yes, even on
Interesting.
standard guards. And it just and
Thanks
it's
for telling me.
well, I mean, it's not in it, I told
No, I don't. I think it's a fine idea. I think it's gonna print gray whenever anybody prints it, but like,
the world, yeah, I agree. Like that's why historically we didn't do it in the past for that reason, that it would print gray. But the more we do this, the more people are just in Procore anyway.
yeah,
So yeah,
that's fine.
and this is a good moment. While I have this up on the screen, this is a common question. How do I keep from having 10 million different versions of a unit, right? Like, how do we keep it simple? And that
You do
that
simple
answer,
jobs.
do simple jobs. Don't work with Vadim and have 10 million unit plans is job one. And then job number two is hacks. So you probably noticed that this unit and this unit are probably pretty much identical, except that this has this 2x6 wall down here. Well, when I have little jogs like this, instead of like creating an entirely different unit for something that's got just a little niggle of a bump, I'll just leave this. I'll just let this be the same unit, and I'll just draw a 2x6 wall over it and tag it in the overall floor plans.
Yep.
I won't go through the trouble of making an entirely different unit type for 2 feet of wall or whatever it is. Same for this little guy. I'll just make a big deal out of it on the floor plans. And as long as you're communicating that clearly to the contractor, hey, do this little nib right here, and make a note of it, then you're going to be fine. If you don't tell the contractor, like, that we're doing this will get us in trouble, right? So it's a decision that we've made, that we're just going to make sure that for everybody else here, this isn't their first rodeo. We're just going to pay attention to it, and we're going to get it right. Make sense?
Mhm.
Yep.
Drawing is like writing sometimes. There's a number of different ways to say what you want to say, and some are more clear than others.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you're just trying to say what you want to say and communicate what you need to communicate to get the job done.
Correct. Final-ish things. Again, I think I've said this already, but if not, I'm going to break one of these groups just to reiterate this. Give me a second. I don't want to break this original one. Go up here and do what we said we never do, which is ungroup. And now you can see that interior group. I just want to make 2 points. First off, that this is the 1BR interior. You'll note that name. That's how we like to name that. Keeps it simple. And it's a big thing for me anyway. I don't know if everybody agrees with it, but it's a big thing for me that the apartment door, the patio door, the entry door are part of the interior group.
No, that's a huge thing. Absolutely.
Yes.
Mhm.
I get the reason I say it like that, the reason I want it like that is that if it's not part of that interior group, I get constant issues where the enlarged unit plans, which show this group, don't match potentially the swing of the doors for the outer group. Or the outer group, somebody changes one of these outer groups, either consciously or unconsciously, and then it becomes a conflict in the drawings.
The
It's
general
also
idea is that the units on the lawn need to talk with the units in the building on the left.
correct.
They need to be the same.
Correct. You can see here, right, that this unit, now that we've ungrouped it, it's not, we don't do a stack of 3 that's like, we don't do groups 3 layers deep. This just gets copied up, right? So here's, for however many floors, and then that gets all stuffed into your exterior group, right?
Mm.
And then again, we do the trim as necessary. So this, I guess, a couple more tricks that I like to play, for a little bit of it's, design hacks, right? Because you get a variety of unit groups, if you will, I can add diversity to my facades by doing like group 1B the facade is different than say group 1C, right? And then the facade, could be different for my accessible units. And what that does is it allows the buildings without much effort on my part at all to look like the design isn't just a big symmetrical cupcake, right? Like it has a little bit more of, I don't know how else you want to say it, a little variety, right? When it comes to the facades, which to me is pretty nice. And then I don't have to work very hard at it. And then changing that facade is very, very easy. If I say, for instance, if I were to change the facade of this unit, select all instances, that it would just change these pieces parts, as a design tool for speed, that's been incredibly useful.
All that being said, our average job is a little less complicated than this one, I would say. So
Yeah,
probably
well, I
have
don't.
fewer units, most likely. Usually it's just 3 or 4
Yeah,
standard units and then 3 or 4 corresponding accessible units, type A units.
yeah. I just want to stress, because you never know who gets to stay on our team and who gets sucked into corridor land. That like, and we're doing it with several corridor buildings on our group right now. That this process works even better on a corridor building.
Yeah.
And then like, so
Yep.
let's say on a corridor building, I wanted to do like I said, let's say I had a very special design that I wanted to do on the entrance to the building, right? Just some hypothetical thing. It's very easy to lay out your building schematically as is. And then you could select, I think you could remove these facade materials. Like, let's say I wanted to do a totally different corner on this unit, right? You could either create a new corner unit group, which probably would make the most sense.
If you've got to use it multiple places, yeah.
Yeah. Well, even if you don't, even if you didn't, just having it as a group, because then I could, again, the whole idea is to be able to move it later.
Sure.
The horror of a corridor building, the absolute horror is when you go in and moving it is fucking impossible. Because they've ungrouped everything. It's a nightmare. So I'd leave it in a group and just have it be a different group. But there's also the idea that like I think you can just select on this stuff and like remove this stuff from the group.
Hit delete.
And
And then
yeah.
it's still there. It's still included in the group. Like hover over it for a second. See, well, yeah. See, it's still there, but it's removed from the group. It is, and then you can restore all excluded if you want to put it back.
I don't. That I get leery of because
No,
we
it's
had
there.
issues.
It's just not there.
Well,
It's ghosted.
that I don't like. Okay, I see what you're saying. Julie, help me with this. What I'm trying to say is people have in the past we've done like they've hidden shit that's in a group.
That's what you
Yeah,
do. You just click on it. As long as you're not in the group, if you're just sitting out like in space like you are right now, you select it and you just hit delete.
right. Yeah, or exclude, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Don't like doing that. For the
Well, then
record,
why did
I
you
don't.
just do it?
No, I didn't. See, I mean, it's part of the group.
Yeah.
We don't like doing it because they exclude it from the group or they hide it in a particular group. Like that was investigated for a while and it caused more problems than it solved.
Hey, I gotta drop real quick. I'm getting a call.
No problem. I'd just say that was looked at and it just did not go well. I did not. We were hiding things all over the place. It was not good. Final thoughts. Stairs can be tricky. Stairs and hand railings can be tricky. We don't like to bury those in too many groups if we can. I think in general.
Because they'll typically get excluded.
Yeah, then they get excluded. If you want to do stairs as part of a group, they kind of need to be their own little thing. Let's see. I'm gonna get out of this project and go to Anthony's real quick.
You can run.
Yeah, Cane Run, just to kind of show you. He's got a little bit more work to do, but because it's a proper breezeway building, I wanted to point out that your stairs are separate from everything else.
Right.
So like, let's see, there we go. So one of the things, this is kind of a work in progress. So you can see Anthony hasn't added the
I can sync
siding.
real quick, but
Well, no, it's good. It's good because then
Okay, let's
I
see.
don't have to.
there is siding in there.
Yeah, it's because it's a work in progress. It's perfect, right? So you can kind of see the magic happen. That he still needs to do his siding in here, but like the stairs and everything else are separate. If anything, right, Anthony probably could have these stairs be a group. And we like that, if anything gets copied more than once, we like to see it in a group with certain exceptions. Breezeways, we do want to have a stair group because if you don't have them as a group, they can get away from you in a hurry. You'll make a correction on one breezeway and it won't transpose to the other one, and then we'll make a mistake just because we didn't use groups in the first place. Other cool tricks that we want to. Oh, God, Julie.
No, that was Anthony.
Let's say
I'm not in the model.
I want to be pointed out too that baseless complaint is now being recorded for posterity forever. This guy, we have inside and outside trim, as opposed to doing a piece of trim on one side and a piece of trim on the other. And where possible, we want to use the corner wall sweep trim. That's just a sort of a given. If you don't know where that is, ask anybody on this group.
No, that makes sense.
No, oh, okay. This is just a regular wall sweep. And then we use it for trim. And what some people try to do when they get to an inside corner or an outside corner is put one piece of trim on one side and one piece of trim on the other. And we don't want that. We want it just use this inside edge wall sweep piece. Okay.
So,
If that doesn't make sense, that's okay. Basically, because we use fiber cement for everything, we put trim everywhere. And
I'm familiar with that.
Perfect.
Trim was definitely corner sweeps, all of that. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Other things, like I get this, especially when people start building siding, that wherever possible, and this is for all elements everywhere, we want it tied to the levels. Okay. And I don't particularly like unless there's a good reason, we don't want to do base offsets and top offsets. I mean, again, you'll go in our model, you'll find plenty of offsets. But we want to keep them to a raging minimum, right? So like if I have to change the floor height for whatever reason, that everything's properly tied to its correct level. So again, it makes making potential changes much faster and much easier. Cool.
Cool.
All right. Let's see. Looks like Brian joined.
Hello.
Hello, Brian. We we've got last thing, I guess, for me, I see this a lot. People do roofs, and instead of having it being tied to truss bearing, I've seen people try to make roofs either they're offset somehow, or when they create them, they're tied to the walls, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to describe it. I'll try to draw a roof here real quick, just so you can see what I'm on about. So if I was here and I was drawing a roof, you get the option to pick walls and draw it. That gets screwed up in a hurry. I just would much prefer you just draw the roof. You draw it tied to truss bearing, and you don't do any offsets. Make sense? Again, there's exceptions to every rule, but that's the way you want to be doing roofs, for my opinion, my 2 cents. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, so there it is. That's my general tour of these things. Guys, if I missed, is there anything that jumps out that maybe I've missed as far as things you like to see or mistakes people make where they start Revit modeling and we have to go back and say, no, we need to redo all that?
Nothing comes to mind at the moment.
I know, you'll think of it like 2 minutes after we hang up. All right.
So,
No, go ahead.
well, just generally the biggest challenge for me was just trying to, when I first started, was sourcing the right material, because we have so many projects going on that, like, whether it's project overlap or whatever, sometimes like our template is not exactly like the most up to date always, right? So in that case, you might have to grab it from a project, like some reference material from a project. And if that's the case, just do the due diligence when you go to grab the group and make sure it works for your project. Like, for example, if you were grabbing something from another project, that's like 99% close, there might be like one little difference, like they use a different shower type inside the interior units, but otherwise it's completely identical. So just like remember that if you're grabbing from a project and not like a standard file, then just put the due diligence in and make sure it like fits and works in your project.
100%.
But
And if you're not sure on where to source those elements that you need for your project, you can always ask any of us.
Okay.
Yes, please do not be afraid. We expect you on your first job to call us every single day. And if we don't get calls every single day, we know we're all in trouble. So
Gotcha.
don't be afraid to call. Again, I'm gonna go circle back to Anthony. How long have you been in this model?
I own everything.
You
I checked it all out.
You
Revit said,
did.
would you like to? And I said, yes.
Oh my God. You stop. All right. You stop learning from Julie. Julie has discovered a way to keep me out of her models, and this is it. This is the trick. Open everything. Keep the old man out. This example right here, like Julie's done a really nice job of getting us the right bathroom vanities. And there is garbage everywhere. Even in our old drawings, and I try to purge it when I find it, but sometimes from time that, given time constraints, that's not always possible. And we love a perfect template, but Chris obviously and I will never get off the phone. So that is also an ongoing problem. But these are there, and if you find out that we're not using them, let us know so we can get that fixed. Because vanities, you would not believe how much a bathroom vanity can cause problems. It's unreal.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And we can give you like the server locations for our bath vanities as well as our kitchen islands. Any other,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We keep, and you watch me go here. I do know that they've done a very good job in the library. We have a garden style specific library. This is for my team. Chris and Ted use this all the time. That I know that we keep a lot of good documents. If you're looking for something, half the time it's in here.
Okay.
The other half of the time Julie, where is do we keep a little bit of special Revit in here?
It's in current data and standards.
Current data and standards. Oh, inside of this, is there a
Yes.
full?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I just blind? Where is it?
It was the third one down.
Oh, garden
the
style,
top.
current data.
Yes.
I'm looking for a C.
Garden style.
Oh
Sorry.
my gosh. No, you're fine. And then what do? Revit
Revit.
support?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's in the model groups for the bath
Mhm.
vanities.
See, I've lost this because I bookmarked it in Revit, so I no longer have to wonder anymore. But yeah, no, they're clutch. They're great. You remember how we talked about insertion points? Like those still need to be fixed for those,
Okay.
unfortunately. But other than that, they're pretty much perfect. But we keep a lot of garden style Revit-y stuff just chilling out in here, along with a lot of other project management nonsense. So
That's super helpful. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So this recording, in all its wonderfulness, will go on to YouTube, like everything else will be on Earth. And we'll send you out a link so you can refer back to it, because obviously, unless you happen to be Rain Man or have Rain Man characteristics, we completely understand that, you probably want to revisit this. So I'll try to get that up to, I want to say today. It depends on if Julie's going to hit me with Ewing or not.
I'm still working through it.
Okay, there's time. I'm gonna go on up on YouTube. All right. I don't think Chris is gonna rejoin. Apparently he's out. Any other questions? Anything else? Anything else anybody can think of for the group?
Nothing from me.
Awesome. Okay. Appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yep.